Welcome to Inspiring Women with ADHD. I'm Renee Allen, the host of this podcast, and I'm excited to be here today. Today, I want to talk a bit about your presence, your ability to be yourself when you're in front of other people, whether that's talking or just sharing something in another way besides talking, but usually talking. And we tend to think of people with ADHD as super talkative, but maybe not all are. Maybe hyperverbal isn't what the doctor wrote on her chart, like mine. In verbal capacity, ability, likeliness, actuality. Hyperverbal, that's me. So you might not be hyperverbal. You may not have a lot of words that come out of your mouth often and at a great speed. That may be you, that may not be you. ADHD shows up in different ways, especially if you have the inattentive type versus the hyperactive type. I don't know. Some say that the verbal part comes more with the hyperactive type, but I don't know that that's necessarily true. And I haven't done a deep dive on that, but I don't know that that's necessarily true. It might be. It might be. Feel free to let me know if you see something that actually points to that. But back to how you present yourself. Are you able to present yourself in a way that feels authentic to you with friends, with others, in different scenarios? We have so many different scenarios, right? We have people in our lives that we might see every day, whether you have people in your home, your family, people you talk to, someone at work, someone at the gym, someone at the grocery store. I've always been someone that talks to the people at the grocery store, especially the checker. Although I have been enjoying the self-checkout quite a bit, which takes away from that conversation. But, for whatever reason, I think it helps me keep track of the pricing better. Do you ever do that where you buy something only because it's on sale, only because it's buy one, get one free? And then you get home and you realize it wasn't, and maybe it wasn't even on sale at all. You grab something from the shelf and you realize that it actually either didn't ring up the way it was supposed to, or it just wasn't actually on sale. You didn't read the sign right or something like that. So if I'm doing that myself, I pay attention, because if I do talk to the person at the checkout stand, I don't know if they call them a checker, but if I talk to that person, I often forget to notice what's happening with the prices. And 2 different times, 2 years in a row at Trader Joe's, I bought some beef that was kosher, and I didn't know it was. Not that I wouldn't want it to be kosher, but I thought it was $17.99, and it was more like $50 or $60, depending on which year I did it, because it was kosher and it was $17.99 a pound. And the second year, I looked at the sign, I read it, I thought, is this the same as what I bought last year? Because my husband likes roast beef and it's so easy to put it in a crock pot, and I don't cook very often, but that's an easy one for Christmas or something. But yeah, 2 years in a row, talking to the person at the checkout stand, because they are the friendliest at Trader Joe's. I will say that. I haven't been to Trader Joe's as frequently as I used to, just because of the drive there. The overwhelm of the drive to certain places since I've moved is kicked in. It makes it so I don't want to go. And I think, why? I used to not mind if you had to drive 25, 30 minutes to go to a store that you liked. And now I do. But anyway, yeah. So that can be a distraction, and maybe we don't pay attention. But back to who we talk to, who we talk in front of, who we share with in a free way, or who we're actually authentic with. It's fascinating to think about, because even if you're a super talkative person, you may find that there are certain situations, certain people where you're not as comfortable as you feel like you are naturally as a person. So I've been reading, well, sort of. I that's one of my inattentive problems is I would say the past several years, 10 years maybe, I haven't been able to sit and read a book cover to cover or consistently. And with this book, it's a book that a friend recommended to me when I was diagnosed with ADHD because her daughter recommended it to her when she was diagnosed with ADHD. And it's called A Radical Guide. That part's written very small, so you may not see it if you saw it in a bookstore. A Radical Guide for Women with ADHD. And the subtitle is Embrace Neurodiversity, Live Boldly, and Break Through Barriers. And the authors, from what I remember, at least one of them has ADHD, maybe both of them. And they are either a PhD in psychology or master's in psychology with a forward by someone else who has a PhD. So they have some credentials in their studies. And when I read the book, when I read portions of the book, I saw some parts that I needed or appreciated. I don't know if I needed them, but it was just interesting to read that I connected with. That's a better word. I found parts of the book that I connected with, and then there were some parts that I thought, oh, that's not me. And that can totally be the case when we look at ourselves in comparison to other people with ADHD, especially at different ages. That's why my podcast is for women with ADHD, because girls with ADHD, it could be different. Little boys, totally different. Men, I'm not sure. I haven't experienced as many men in my life with ADHD as women, but I'm sure it's different for all of us. It's different from woman to woman, so it's going to be different at different parts of your life, and it is different from gender to gender. But not that I care about that much, but even within the group of women with ADHD, we will be different. We will see similarities, and that is exciting, at least for me. I find it exciting. I find it inspiring. That's why I call this Inspiring Women with ADHD, because I am inspired by other women and learning from them. And it can be validating for sure to talk to somebody else and find out you're not the only one who can't find this or lost track of that or whatever you did, whatever the little might seem like a blunder, mindless blunder that happened recently. But there were also things that I just thought didn't apply to me because they weren't my needs as a woman with ADHD. Maybe I could relate to being this person or that person, but I didn't feel like I don't need that. That's not my desire to be bold, live boldly. I didn't think I needed to live boldly. I don't know. Maybe I do, but that's just not my desire. So I'm reading this book and I took bits and pieces and then I closed it, off and on for months. And then I decided to get the audio version because then maybe I'd listen to it and learn something else. And I saw all kinds of things or heard all kinds of things in there that I didn't know were in the book. And I've jumped around a bit and I skip things that I don't, feel like I connect with as much, especially the little parts that they have where, this is this woman's experience. Most of the time, I can't relate. And maybe it's not as fun to listen to someone read about a woman's experience on audio than to actually talk to someone and hear a story. Hearing a person tell a story is completely different than hearing somebody read a story about a person, at least in my mind. Back to this chapter. So today, I was driving home from teaching yoga and I thought, oh, put on Audible, and saw that I had that book. I didn't even remember that I had used a credit because I don't have Audible very consistently. I get it every once in a while and buy a book. But anyway, I had it. So I was listening to it, and there's a chapter called Take Center Stage. Take center stage. Maybe that's part of living boldly. Take center stage. And I thought about it and thought, just from the title, I've always been somebody who enjoys taking center stage. in certain capacities, not at a piano recital. I used to play the piano when I was younger. I think I mentioned that last time. My hands would get sweaty. The older I got, when I was younger, I don't think I thought about it as much, but the older I got, my hands would get kind of sweaty. Like I think that was like I was getting nervous because as I analyze it now, which that is an aspect of ADHD, to get curious, to be very curious, to take a lot of ideas and string them together. But as I analyze that, I think I didn't make mistakes as much playing the piano because I didn't know how to play the song. It was because my mind was wandering. My mind was wandering, and then I wasn't paying attention to what I was doing, and then I'd slip up a bit. That's what I think. I think it was the inattentiveness that added to that, which is kind of fascinating to think about because the Olympics are almost here. If I say that now and you listen to this a year later, yeah, it's not almost here, but the Olympics in Paris about to begin. I used to watch gymnasts, ice skaters, and people like that needed to do something with precision, something that they already know how to do, or they wouldn't be doing it. They already know how to do that triple, what's it called? Triple kowtow or something like that. I don't know. In ice skating. I mean, this will be Summer Olympics, so there won't be ice skating. But they already know how to do that round off, back triple flip, or whatever they're doing in gymnastics. It's probably far more than they did when Nadia Comaneci was in the Olympics. But I would always be surprised when the announcer who knows more about the sport than I do would say, oh, they came out of that wrong. Because sometimes it's noticeable. Oh, they didn't land perfectly. They didn't get that perfect stick landing in gymnastics. But sometimes they know what that attempt was supposed to be like and how they didn't get high enough so it didn't end up this way, or they actually took one flip out of it or one turn out of it or something that, oh, now their level of difficulty, they covered it up. Maybe I wouldn't know what they did, but they're not going to get as high of a score. And I would think, I wonder why somebody who's so good at this, knows how to do it, does mess up. Why do they mess up? Why do they mess up? Obviously, there's human error, there's flaws, but I would imagine they've done it over and over and over and over, many, many, many times. And my guess is just the brain wandering just a bit, lacking awareness of one little part, or the stress of the idea that I'm in the Olympics. This is my moment. I've got to do it. That adds something to the body that may make it so it doesn't perform, or the brain not perform as it should be. But we've talked about habits and all those patterns that get in your mind that make it so you just do things automatically. Your body just does it because you've done it for so many days, so many times, so many years, whatever. Your brain just knows how to do it. That was Michael Phelps. I don't know if you've learned a little bit about him, but all the things he did before a race, when he'd lean over and flap his arms up and down, all the things he had done, I think he started doing when he was like 9 with his trainer. I think, if I'm remembering. One of my memory problems is numbers. And my husband will know exactly the number of a year, a date, or whatever, or a statistic of weather, storm, the wind was this many miles an hour. I have so much inaccuracy like that. Like it could be 20 miles an hour or 200 miles an hour. It could be, so I think he was 9, but I don't think he was 19. And I usually have one number right, or the decimal just off. I don't think he was 90. I don't think he was 19. So he was probably 9. But anyway, back to that being on stage. Thank you for going on my tangent with me to why being on stage, for one thing, like playing the piano. Another thing for me is acting. Well, not that I tried that much, but I was in musicals in high school. I learned very quickly that I could not read lines perform lines or act, but I could stand in the background without talking and act and sing and dance. So that was fun for me. But talking on stage without words to read or memorize, I can do that. I can take center stage with that. Or just being in front of people. It's fun for me, I guess. But even if you're like that, and maybe you're not, maybe you're horrified, maybe you're like two of my daughters that would think, never on earth would I want everybody in the room looking at me. I don't think about it that much, but I started realizing when I was started to realizing I started to realize as I was listening to this chapter on taking center stage that center stage just means when the eyes are on you. So it could just be a one-on-one conversation. It could be an actual stage with 2,000 people, and that is obviously different, right? There are people who are happy to talk to one or two or three people, but they would never want to actually be on stage and have people look at them. So there's big variation of when you're okay having the attention on you, who is paying attention to you, where is your comfort with that? How old are you? Because when we're younger, we just don't think as much about who's looking at us. But maybe for shy people, because there were shy people in school, I remember them, we do see shy people at times, and maybe they didn't want people to look at them. I didn't know that. I just thought the shy people were sweet. They were just not as talkative. But a lot could be going on in our heads that create how the words come out of our mouths when we talk to people. And there are messages that we give ourselves that create that or add to that. And it could also be messages other people are giving you. You can see it in their faces if you're empathetic or you have that ability to read social cues, which is one of the strengths that comes with ADHD. If you have that ability, you may see, I'm not really connecting with these people. And that may make you exit the stage quicker, which could be just closing your mouth in a group of people and not talking as much. It could be actually thinking, I thought I could do this and I clearly can't. I don't think I'll do this again. So there are different manners of being in stage. Being on stage. There are different situations that we're in, and it's interesting to look and think about what your awareness is when you're talking to somebody. When do you feel the most comfortable? When do you still feel comfortable when it's more people or people you don't know? Do you? And whether or not you're comfortable talking, performing, whatever it is, it could even be throwing a baseball from the pitcher's mound. Whether or not you're comfortable with the eyes on you, I would imagine has something to do with confidence and a surety of your ability to do what you're doing. But it could also have to do with how much you care about the other person's response to what you say. And that could be having to do with your concern for yourself or your concern for the other person. And if you think about, like, if you're speaking to a crowd of people or you're teaching a class, I'm very comfortable teaching a class or doing public speaking. But I have found incidences where I'm super unsure of myself and uncomfortable. And in those instances, it was because I wasn't as aware of the needs of the people that would be in the class, or I wasn't as familiar with them and their background. So if I could predict the people there, like if I was speaking to a bunch of teenage girls, ages 14 through 17, and knew what their concern was, or maybe what the person wanted me to speak to them about, that wouldn't be a problem. But if it was more varied in the ages, backgrounds, whatever, I would struggle with that because I have a need to meet their needs. And so, yeah, part of it's the confidence thing, but a big part of it is that empathy. I don't know that that's truly empathy, but the other person, caring about the other person, or just connecting with the other person. And that's a big part of what speaking is connecting with the other person, whether you're doing it in a conversation or if you're doing it in a class or as a speaker or something like that. And then if you go to one-on-one, which maybe a lot of you aren't public speakers or teachers, and so that doesn't relate to you as much. But if you're speaking to somebody one-on-one or in a small group, there is also that knowledge or that recognition of how they respond, and that could impact your comfort level or your confidence. Or if you already have an assumption of how they respond and you're intimidated by that for some reason, then that could impact that. It could impact your ability to feel comfortable on center stage. And I know I'm thinking of so many different ways that this could play out. And I haven't even gotten to the one that I wanted to talk about more. But I'm just trying to have you look at yourself, because you might think, I'm not really comfortable talking to people one-on-one, but I don't mind teaching a class at all. Or I'm not comfortable speaking to these people. Or when I went to this party on Saturday night, I wasn't comfortable there at all. And I didn't enjoy talking to the people at all. And just weighing out, why is that? Was it them? Or was it you? Or was it just lack of connection? Because we do have this deep need to connect. If you have the aspect of ADHD where you have a need of sharing, then you gain something from that sharing experience. You feel heard. You feel like you got to express yourself. You get to connect in some way. And if you're not getting that sharing aspect, maybe that's why you don't feel comfortable. Or maybe you don't even get a chance to connect with that person because your own thoughts, your own insecurity or discomfort of what that person may think or feel, whether it has to do with your education status, how educated you are compared to them, or how much money they have compared to you. I don't know if those things ever separate you from somebody, but when I think about it, I grew up, my dad was a truck driver. He said his whole life, the biggest raise he got in his whole life of driving truck, 25 cents an hour. And he didn't have a job that paid him a lot of money, but he preferred that. That wasn't actually his dream job, and he actually got his dream job at different moments in life. But he did it because he didn't, I think, didn't want to work in a situation where other people were, I don't know. I mean, now we think of micromanaging. He'd rather be on his own during the day, and he didn't get a college education. So my grandpa had a trucking business. My dad drove truck for him until my grandpa retired, and then he drove truck for somebody else. And that's what he did. So we grew up in a family with 5 kids without a lot of money. I never thought much about it because our little town of 3,000 something, the people that we thought were quote unquote rich weren't compared to most standards and, wherever of wealth. I don't know that anybody was wealthy in my hometown. But as I went to college and was around people who had more wealth, I found that all this confidence that I thought I naturally had diminished in groups of people where they all wore these kinds of clothes or had money to go buy more of those clothes, or they did things, their lifestyle, their cars were, I didn't even have a car the whole time I was in college. My first car was when my husband and I got married after I graduated. So that was different too. It wasn't like I felt that way with everyone with a lot of money, because I ended up becoming friends with someone who I didn't know had a lot of money, because she probably had more money than all those other people combined. I mean, well, not her, but her dad. But we became friends, and she invited me the next year to live in the condo that her dad owned with her sister, who I knew from the year before. Didn't know she had a ton of money either, or came from a family with a lot of money. And I got some more insight into that world. And we would go to the college football games and sit in those boxes that's, you're up really high. And that was exciting. That was really exciting, especially when it was snowing. We went to college where it snowed, and we would be in there warm and watch the game, and it was pretty cool. And I found that the reason I felt comfortable with them is they did everything they could in normal conversation to not let it be evident that they had a lot of money or they were in a family with a lot of money. Their dad raised them to be that way. With the house that they lived in, the cars that they drove, they were new. They had more money, but they weren't flashy money. And I'm not saying people shouldn't have this car or that. My husband loves old Porsches because his dad bought one when he was younger. And he said that all the kids cried when his dad said he was selling it, because they thought it was so fun back in the, I don't know, late 60s, early 70s. I don't know. Like I said, I'm not good with the numbers. But so we've always, well, not always, most of our marriage, we've had at least one old Porsche that he restores. And I know that some people might look and go, oh, that's an expensive car. Everyone has their opinions or whatever. I don't have opinions of what cars people drive, but I have found that I'm more intimidated in a group of people that look or act like they're dripping in wealth. Not that that happens that often, but I identified kind of early on, because it was new for me in college, a level of discomfort, a level of insecurity in that situation. And I think that's why on center stage, I wouldn't feel comfortable playing the piano, because I'm not that good at playing the piano, or even at something, a piece that I might be able to play well at home. I find that I'm not as able to do that in public. So some people find that their center stage presence doesn't work in certain situations, and it does with others. But let's go back to just the one-on-one conversation, or the one, two people or whatever. And this was what was the most interesting to me, even though I haven't talked about it yet here today. But this is the most interesting thing to me in this chapter, called something center stage. Like I said, I never remember the little details. Taking center stage. I just opened that back up on my phone. But when you're in a one-on-one conversation, you are taking center stage when it's your turn to talk, or when you're talking. You are the one that people or the person is looking at, and you're the one that's saying what's within you, or whatever you want to say to get a message across, to work with somebody, to enjoy their presence, any of those things. So when you're talking to somebody, what happens, especially one-on-one, and it could happen with a crowd, but I'm going to stay focused here, put on the blinders, Renee. When we're talking to somebody and we have that ability to recognize social cues, we have an empathetic nature, and maybe even the need to keep that person comfortable and not have any conflict that can change our presence on that stage. That can change our authenticity, your authenticity, mine authenticity. I keep saying our, and I just mean if we're doing this, I'll say that. But yeah, so it can change the words that come out of our mouths. And what was interesting is the authors were talking about how we often soften what we say with qualifiers to make the other person more comfortable. And because that, it may weaken our position or our message or our authenticity. And I'll just give you a little situation that's more, it's not conversational as much as you actually want to accomplish something, because I think this is where this is more needed, with us using our voices, using our words, so that we actually are presenting, whether you're on stage or not, you're actually presenting what you want to present. And these qualifiers that we use can weaken whatever position you have, whatever you hope to accomplish. And if you're like me, there's partially people pleasing going on, but I also think I've had ideas in my mind, and this happens with women a lot, of not wanting to be that person that's just kind of bouldering through things. And when I had kids in school, I think there's always that mom that's complaining about something or saying we shouldn't be doing this or whatever. There's a mom that might do that more than the others. And so they stand out to the teachers, to the woman in the office, the man in the office, whoever it is there. They stand out as that mom. And so I had it in my brain for a long time that I didn't want to be that mom. I didn't want to be that mom. Obviously, I was judging that mom, but I didn't want to be that mom. And I found some instances, I have 6 kids, with my last 2 kids where I thought, I need to be that mom. I need to be that mom. And I need to go in and say, this isn't right. And I don't like the way that you're teaching. My mom's a school teacher, retired teacher. My daughter's a teacher. My grandpa was a teacher. I have compassion for the teachers because I've seen the teacher's side. My aunt and uncles, a lot of school teachers in our family. But I had to stand up when I needed to stand up. And as I look at that, I see, one, I had to combat an idea in my mind. I also had to decide I didn't care if the teacher liked me or not. And I did try to pad things sometimes with words that worked better, and it didn't always work, especially if the teacher was more of a bully teacher, which one of them was. And I actually took my son out of school that year and did independent study with him because I couldn't make a change, and we needed to make a change. She wasn't willing to make a change. I wasn't either. So that was the solution. But I've realized as I look to these different situations of when I have been able to say, I'm going to be that person. I'm going to be that person that stands out to you, that complains, that's the squeaky wheel. I may not be liked as much. I'm not the team player, which is more the thing in business, right? And that's okay. But when I look at that, I look at all the situations where I've done that and I've decided it's okay if that person doesn't like me anymore. It's okay if they felt uncomfortable a bit, because this doesn't always happen with people that we don't know very well. It might even be a friend that we need to tell them something, or a relative, and then the guilt comes. That's for me. It's like I start to look at, maybe I'm not as worried about them. I'm worried about the guilt that comes back to me because I just keep thinking about it. And then, so there's so many scenarios I'm sure you could think of where you don't say what you really want to say, or you do, and then you regret it, but then you are glad that you did it because it was the right thing to do. It's hard to do. And as women, I think it may be harder than it is for men. And when with women with ADHD and the ability to recognize the other person maybe more than another person and have that awareness, then it complicates things. And so it was interesting to me in this book that they talked a lot about how we use words like actually or just. I just was thinking about this and was just thinking if we did this, instead of saying, I think we should do this instead, taking out all those padded words and just applying it in a work situation or more of a situation with somebody you don't know as well. I've gone back and forth with that where I think I actually have some ideas here and I like to talk to you about them because this is important. And sometimes it's met with some bullying that they hope that if they just push you back down, you'll just go back down. And I'm having a situation actually on Friday. It's not a situation, but I teach yoga. So there's different management at, different gyms, yoga studios, places like that. And one that I'm working with right now, they've had different managers at this location. And there's actually a manager over all the instructors because it's a pretty big gym. And there have been things that not just once and not just to me, but to multiple people over the past 2 years aren't comfortable for them in class. And one is the temperature of the room. And so I've tried different things, whether email, talking to somebody, I won't even get into all that. But over the last 2 years, none of it has been successful. And one of the frustrating things is my requests have been met with, oh, that won't work, or just do this. And the things that I've done that they suggest don't always work. Like ask when you come in for someone to turn the temperature up. Few problems. One doesn't really give it a chance to go up within those minutes. If they'd started a half hour before when the class before was ending, it could work. But also sometimes they don't even remember when I go down and ask them. I've even tried calling on the way there and they've forgotten. And I understand that. I've even asked, can you just turn it up like set yourself an alarm that you turn up every week at this time. And they said, no, that's too much to remember. But then at the end of my class, someone comes up now every week and looks at the temperature and puts it at a different temperature. This is somebody who works there. And I asked, this was the last manager, I talked with her one day. I said, can I meet with the manager and just talk to her as I was leaving? And said, why are you able to do that for that teacher, but not for me? And she said, well, they just asked so many times that we remembered. And I thought, so have I. So have I. But anyway, it still hasn't gotten better. And there's a new manager. And that's just one of the requests I have. And the other ones, I'm already not using good qualifiers for myself. I'm already telling myself the other ones aren't as important. They are. They matter to me. And I think they would matter to the other people there. But I know they'll be met with more resistance. And really, it's not my gym, it's theirs. So I'm already weakening my own position. But there's a new manager. I've seen him quite a few times in the past few months, and I've thought I should probably just talk to him. So I sent an email. I set up an appointment. I'm talking to him later this week. And it's good for me to have this awareness right now of going in and not being afraid or not softening what I'm really there for. And I have this voice in my head that says, but I don't want to be a whiner and a complainer. But I did tell him in my email, I've been trying to work through these things for the past 2 years through email, through conversations, and none of it has changed. None of it has changed. And I even felt guilt for saying that because felt like I was talking bad about the other people. It's a problem. It's a problem. Maybe you don't have this people pleaserness within you. And I don't think it's so much that I want people to like me so much. I don't know. I think it's just that empathy. I don't want to make their job worse. I know they already have a busy job. It's all that awareness, which comes in handy. The empathy, the seeking other people's responses, noticing their responses, that all comes in handy, and it's all really helpful when we use it in ways that can be helpful, but it's good to recognize when it's not being helpful. And I don't know, my daughter told me that, you've gone through life this long. If you don't want to change that, you don't have to change that. And I thought, that's true. Maybe I'm happier the other way. I don't know. She was just saying, because I was talking to her about, this awareness of this or that, and I need to not be afraid of somebody else's reaction, and I don't, or be more concerned for them than I am for me. Because I realized that in the instances where I have grown, I've done it because I was actually doing it for somebody else. I was actually advocating for my child. I was actually advocating for somebody who needed that. And maybe I'm even doing that with my yoga class. They need this. But I know with a gym, they will listen more to what the members want than what I want. So that is a little bit strategic. But anyway, thanks for letting me just talk through this a bit and explore the idea. Each time we have eyes on us, we're basically on center stage. Not to scare you or anything if you don't like being on stage, but in conversations, in groups. And there are times that we back up a bit and go behind the curtain. I've done that at dinners before, gatherings, where I've noticed, I think, why do I not have as much need to share here? And who knows, maybe the energy isn't always as high, or the need isn't always as great. But if it's interfering with a relationship in some way, then maybe that's something to look at. But yeah. So my plan for next week's podcasts are to make them more specific with the first 5-day focus challenge that I'm doing that's starting next Monday. So if you want to get in on that, it's free. You can find a link on my website. And I'm almost ready for it. I'm pretty ready for it. And it's just a little email you'll get each day, a little video to watch, a few tasks for each day. And it doesn't take more than a half hour each day, but 5 days of taking action on the ability to focus and manage and minimize distractions. It's going to be great. So I hope you join me with that, and I will gear my podcast next week to align with that more, because there's so much to recognize and realize with distractions. They come in so many ways. And that's one of the big reasons that we struggle with focus. It's one of the reasons everyone struggles with focus, but we already start with a little, well, if you have that inattentive type, we already start back a few steps, or if you even have it in steps in the brain capacity to focus. So anyway, if you're able to join me, go to my website, Renee-Allen.com, and I will be here next week. Bye.
Double chins, rubber ducks, squeaky cheese and paper cups, applesauce, Superman, rocket ships and Peter Pan, boogie boards and parachutes and soda cans, jumping jacks and pillowcases for my hands, Donald Duck and fire trucks and Pokemon, Santa Claus and Johnny Depp and Donkey Kong, chocolate chips and zippers, it's a 914, little children jumping on the trampoline, model trains and passing lanes and super glue, tangerines and magazines and kangaroo.
Oh yeah. Daily Rock.
Rewind, I've run out of time to sing melodies and harmonies. I'm cut short, the silence of sound has yet been found, but not by me. Open windows, broken shadows. Frozen dreams are left for tomorrow. Without a cause, no time for a pause. Rewind, I've run out of time to sing melodies and harmonies. I'm cut short, the silence of sound has yet been found, but not by me.